What's up, guys? Finally, I'm ready to do my review. I actually took some time off from work just so I could spend as much time as possible on the game and really put the time that I felt I needed to put into it before I did a review. I'm able to do the review sooner than I thought because I did invest a lot of time into it. So I'm gonna get into it right away. Um, we're gonna start off with the graphics. The game is clearly better looking than last year. They've done a lot of improvements across the board. There's nothing really that stands out in terms of like, wow, this is mind blowing. It's still not on the same level as games like Forza, but for what it is, it's they've done an admirable job, and it is a clear improvement. I do appreciate all the added detail, the models of the cars, the track environments, the sky. I know a lot of people think stuff like that doesn't matter, but it does. It's always in your vision. When you're in the game and you're racing, these things are there constantly. Even if you're not really staring at them, they help make the whole package just look better. So they've done a lot of improvements. The game looks actually even better than I was expecting. So it's not mind blowing, but if you're not comparing it to like Forza, that's not what it is. And so it looks really good in my opinion. Then there's the sound, right? The sound, in my opinion, is clearly an improvement, but it has a long way to go. It's not where it needs to be. They do need to spend more time on it. And instead of recording at a engine shop or a dyno, I would suggest sticking really high quality equipment inside of an actual car. And when these cars are testing, there's got to be a better way to get a more realistic sound. If I was gonna rate the sound and compare it, let's just say last year, and you could pretty much lump in almost every NASCAR game, has been about a 2 or a 2.5 out of 10, which is horrible. And this game has improved, and it's probably at best a 6 out of 10, which is slightly below average, but compared to before, it is a big improvement. It's noticeable. They just have a long way to go, and they got to keep working at it. But it is appreciated. It is better than listening to last year's game. So that's been improved. Speaking of the sound, I'm gonna lump in the spotter. The spotter is improved, but it there's a little hit and miss with it. It's not busy enough for me. I wish they would give you at least an option to have a chatty spotter or one that's not as chatty. There are many times during the game where I need feedback and the spotter says absolutely nothing. Also, yeah, it is more accurate. They do say a lot more things which sound better, and it doesn't feel like just repetitive. But there are moments where it's not as accurate as it could be. Again, that's a little hit and miss. I found myself many times where the spotter would say clear or clear outside, and as soon as he says clear outside, a split second later he says uh, car on the outside. So if you had moved up because he told you were clear, you would have wrecked because immediately right after the car's there. So they do have to make more improvements in that area, make the spotter more involved. So those are my only complaints, but it is improved over last year. So you're going to hear this a lot. Everything's been improved, but still need more improvement. So in terms of sound, like I said, the engine's better, but needs work. The spotter's better, but needs work. So I'm going to move on from that. I wrote these uh, features and details down, so I don't want to miss anything that I feel is important. Now we're going to talk about presentation. Again, something that has been improved but needs work. What I do love is that before each race, they do give you several shots of each track, and they did it for every single track in the game, which I appreciate. It looks good. Um, the rendering of the track is really pleasing to look at. You have people walking around. It just feels more dynamic, more realistic. So in that sense, the presentation is definite. There's a big improvement there. However, overall as a package, there is a lot to be desired, left on the table. The what they call stories really is just reading text before the race starts, and you could see guys go to the back and stuff. I'm sorry, I'm really not a fan. First, the just reading text is really outdated. We should be hearing audio commentary by now. That really needs to be part of the presentation. And having to read text, first of all, it goes by really quick. So you really got to focus on it and read it. And meanwhile, you're getting ready to start the race. And doing those things together is just doesn't really work for me. I think it's better if it's presented in audio commentary and you could just sit back and soak it in. It's a step forward, but it's really kind of a miss for me. And we really need to get past text. Most of the stuff in this game is text. So the presentation overall is a little disappointing. But there are moments and parts of it that I do appreciate and enjoy, but other parts that are not really good at all. So the presentation's a mixed bag, and there's a lot of room for improvement there. That's really an area they can make big leaps next year, hopefully. So that brings me to customization. There's still no paint booth, okay? And the system they have, in all honesty, is not terrible. I don't really have a problem with it because even though it's very basic, it would work if you gave us more options. First of all, the wheels, you still are limited. I don't understand why you can't color the wheels any color you want, just like you can the body of the car. If you can select any color for the body, you should be able to do that for the wheels. It's a very simple concept. They did add a couple of extra wheel colors. I think there's a gold and there's this fluorescent yellow, which I really like, and that's what I'm pretty much using. But for the most part, and then they did add some templates. Some of them look pretty decent. Again, though, if you're gonna rely on this system, which is very basic, you really gotta step up with options. We should have a shitload of templates. You should be able to color the wheels any color you want, and maybe even customize fire suits. Stuff like that. Very simple to do, but yet adds a lot to a very basic system. I don't have a problem with the actual system, except for there's just not enough options there. So you got two options as far as I'm concerned going into the future. Either give us a fully fleshed out paint booth, which I prefer, or really step up and flesh this system out and give us a lot more options. Yes, we only have 4 numbers still. They did tell us it was a licensing issue. I don't know. There's got to be something they can do. They really do need to sit down with NASCAR, whoever it is they got to talk to, and say, look, you got to give us more options. You can't just tie our hands over bullshit like this. This is really basic stuff, and you're limiting simple features that could really elevate the game and please, please more people in general. And there's no reason for it. It just doesn't make sense. So the customization is still kind of lacking. It is improved, and if you spend time on it, yeah, you could come up. You do come up with more combinations of schemes that it's better than last year, but still needs improvement. So that's that. Now we're going to get into a little bit more of the deeper stuff. The physics of the game have been improved. Okay. Now, this is an arcade game. It is not a simulator. And if you keep that in mind, I think there's a lot you can appreciate with what they've done. So, the first thing I can tell you right off the bat, yes, the contact physics are improved. That ping pong effect where as soon as somebody makes contact with you, you really lose control of the car, it has been greatly reduced. If you make hard enough contact with somebody, yes, you will lose control of the car, and that's realistic. That's the way it's supposed to be. You shouldn't be able to, have a car that's a tank, and so yes, everything has a limit, but it's greatly reduced, and the game gives you a chance to save the car a lot more often. And also, the grass is no longer ice. You can get in the grass, and you can still somewhat gather control of the car, and you don't end up completely spinning out unless you really, made a mistake on your own and overdrove a corner or something. There's a lot that's still in your control. So the grass physics are improved. Also, just the details, things like the dirt flying up in front of the windshield, that is really cool, especially in road courses. So every little detail really counts, and it's noticeable. Things that you don't think are a big deal, but every time you see it, it's nice, and it's something that you do. It does get your attention. So the biggest areas where you're going to notice the physics improvements are when you're racing. Ask yourself how many times you found yourself in a situation where something happened and you say to yourself, I thought I was going to completely wreck. Last year that was a wreck, but this time I was able to save it. I might have lost a couple of spots, but it didn't ruin my race. I was able to gather control of the car and continue. So I find myself saying that a lot, and that's a good thing because it's proof to me that the physics have been improved. It's not a simulator. I just want to remind you guys need to stop expecting it to be a simulator. But for what it is, as an arcadey type of game, it really is improved, and it's more of a pleasure to drive. So, it's improved, but like everything else, it still needs tweaks, and it's something that's never going to be perfect. So every time they release another game, I do expect them to keep evolving and improving it. So now we're going to get into one thing that they really touted, which was the Dirt series, and speaking a little bit more, about the physics. One, the Dirt series, I am impressed with it. I like it more than I thought I would. It's fun to drive. Are the physics realistic? No, they're not. The cars don't really behave like real dirt cars. So that much is obvious. However, they're still fun to drive. And I do think that there's a lot there to enjoy, even if it's not realistic. The AI seems to drive even less realistic. It's almost like they're on asphalt. You should see them getting sideways, and you really don't. But it doesn't really ruin the game. It's still fun. They're still quite challenging. And as far as the dirt physics, there is something that also holds it from being more realistic. And it has to do with the setups, which I will get more into later on. But you can mess around with the setups, and you can get that car to drive more like a real dirt car. That the problem with this, the main one of the main issues with the game is the default setups that you're given. They just don't really work that well. They're not that good, and they really show themselves in the dirt physics, is one area, and the cars don't really seem to handle the way you expect. So you can make a lot of improvements just by working on a custom setup. So it's possible to get the car to handle a lot more like a dirt car. You just got to find that, it's not going to do it out of the box. So, but overall, the Dirt series is impressive. It's fun. I am impressed with the tracks. I was expecting tracks that were less detailed and just more generic. They did a great job. Every track has a unique feel to it, almost like these are real places that exist. One of my favorite tracks is I'm not sure if it's Taggart. There's a track with a carnival outside, and I love the detail. The carnival is actually, the rides are moving as you're racing. Those are the type of details that I've been talking about, that they need to focus more on details. There's not one detail in the game that's going to stop you in your tracks and like blow your mind away. But it's a combination of small details that all add up to elevate the game. And this is just one of many. The dirt itself looks really good. The game just it just has more of a shine to it, and it looks good. The lighting, um, there's a lot going on there. And in terms of graphics, which I did speak about, but I forgot to mention, there is one negative. There's still issues when it comes to aliasing. Those jagged edges you see. Um, Also, there's screen tearing that's been there since the first game. There's this, for those of you who don't know, there's like a line that you see, and then the track is actually, or artifacts are rendering right in front of you. Like the shadow of the fence as you're racing, you'll see a thin line, and you'll see like the dirt or the track itself and the shadows rendering right in front of you in real time. That's screen tearing, right? Uh, it's not really popping, even though it is popping, but it's caused by screen tearing. It's too technical to get into, but these are issues that have been there since the first game. It's not game breaking, but it's there and it's noticeable. So those are just a couple of added negatives, things that need to be worked on. But the Dirt series for me is a positive. So I do like it. It's fun. I notice a lot of people online are having a lot of fun with it. And at the end of the day, it doesn't have to be 100% realistic to be fun. And at the end of the day, it's the fun that matters. And I think they really did a great job with the Dirt series. So we're going to move on from that. And now we're going to get to the star of the show. The thing that, in my opinion, really elevates this game to another level. And I also feel really vindicated by some of the things in this game, because they're things I've been talking about for a long time. Now, those of you who have followed me for a while, you know the things I'm talking about. Common themes whenever I'm talking about NASCAR games. The AI, okay? Things like just adding more challenge to the game, and how that alone would elevate everything. And in this game, you can honestly feel such a huge improvement. The AI is fantastic. It's not perfect. Like everything else, it's an improvement that still needs more improvement. But that's always going to be a work in process. What the fuck am I trying to say? It's a work in progress. And just like the physics, the AI, the handling, all of those gameplay mechanics, it's never going to be perfect. And they have to keep tweaking it all the time. And the AI is no different. However, they fucking came out and they're not playing around. The I love it. They will give you all the challenge you could ask for and then some. Uh, they race, they're brutal at times. At the highest settings, There are going to be many moments of frustration. There's going to be a lot of times you want to pull your hair out, but it's all good. And I'm going to explain why. This is really, I think, one of the best representations of the sport of NASCAR. And for far too long, we've gotten one game after the next that is more of, they're trying to, give you instant gratification and get you to win right away and become a champion. And they've always thought that, hey, this is what people want. And I've been saying it for a long time. You got to make it challenging. You got to make people earn it. And that is what gives you another thing that I've always talked about that I feel vindicated for is sense of accomplishment. You guys have heard me say that before many times in past, talking about games in the past and how important it is for you to feel as a player a sense of accomplishment. When you play a game, do you feel like you really achieved something? That only happens if there's a real challenge. If something's easy, there's no sense of accomplishment. And this game really hit the nail on the head because the AI is so challenging. And it makes you earn every inch, every position. 30th place, 20th place, never felt so good. There are moments where you're just fighting to finish mid-pack, just to, get a certain spot. You're not racing for wins. You're not racing for top fives. You're just racing to get the best possible finish and try to stay relevant in the sport. And that is one of the biggest compliments I could say about this game. There's two things. One, it really gives you a realistic sense of what it's like to be a part of NASCAR and be a driver. It's not easy. And for far too long, games have made it seem like anybody can just jump in one of these stock cars and just, put the pedal to the metal and just fucking drive to the front. It's not easy. It's frustrating. It's a fight. And like I've told you guys a million times, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. It's about fighting lap after lap after lap with the same couple of cars. You could pass them, and then if you make even the slightest mistake, they make you pay for it. They'll take their spot right back. And with that comes along a lot of tense moments, frustration. If you make a mistake and you slide up too far because you overdrove a corner, or you made a bad choice and you dive bomb, or you squeeze yourself in between the wall and another car, they will make you pay for stupidity. And at the end of the day, the real big compliment I could say is this game will make you a better racer. It will make you a smarter racer because you realize right away you can't get away with the things you've been getting away with. You can't just use your car as a toy, as a battering ram, smashing cars out of the way, making your way to the front. You can't just abuse other cars. You can't just abuse your car. You can't just overdrive corners. The tire model is improved. It really works. It's not perfect. It still needs work, just like everything else, but it is noticeably better. You can see that after a while, the characteristics of the handling change because of the tire wear. And it forces you to focus harder on driving smarter. The game rewards you for consistency. It's not about racing the fast 2 or 3 fastest lap times, because you can get a fast lap time, but if you keep pushing the car beyond its limit, you will now lose more than you gained. That's realistic. That's what real NASCAR racing is about. Like I said, it's a marathon. You have to treat this as a marathon. You got to race smarter. You got to take your time, be more patient. The game rewards you for patience, for consistency, for taking care of your car and not asking it to do something beyond its capability. It rewards you for being patient and waiting for your pit stop so you can make an adjustment, which is another thing that's improved. The adjustments you make in pits really are, uh, you really feel it. A half a round of wedge, you'll notice it. You got to be careful not to over adjust. And the car literally, it changes. You might get the car to come alive on a short run, but the car goes away from you in the later part of the run. Vice versa, you can get a car that, is squirrely in the beginning, and you kind of just holding on. You might lose 2 or 3 spots, but you keep fighting, you keep focusing, and as each lap goes by, the handling starts coming to you, and you start reeling in those cars in front of you. And that's the beauty of NASCAR. It's the beauty of racing. If you are really a hardcore fan of racing, this game is for you because it rewards you for putting the time in. And this is what I love most about this game. Uh, it rewards you. You run longer races, right? You're free to play the game any way you want, but I'm here to tell you, if you're just doing sprints, quick little short races, you're cheating yourself. You're the one that's missing out. And that's why I'm just giving you this advice. Race longer races, and you're going to get the full experience. And like I said, you could be battling mid-pack, and you'll be fighting some of the same cars lap after lap, and that's where the game starts becoming really immersive. And as I said before, you will become a better racer because you realize right away, I can't just dive bomb and push AI out of the way. You try to manhandle the AI, they're gonna eat you alive. And I love that. That's realistic. Do you realize how hard NASCAR is as a sport? That even really good drivers struggle week after week. There's only a handful of guys that really can show up at most tracks with a real opportunity to win or get a top 5. NASCAR is a brutal sport, and this game is such a great change of pace because, like I said before, past games have been about instant gratification. They think making you win right away or just letting you, get to the front fast and easy, that's what people want. This game is brutal, and it's a harsh reality check, especially for people that are used to really treating the game like a toy. If you treat it more like it's a real car, like your competitors are real, you're not going to smash into them. You're going to try to race cleaner. You're going to try to race smarter, and take your time. And that's why running longer races really will give you the full experience. And I promise you, at the end, it's well worth your time. The game rewards you because you feel a bigger sense of accomplishment, which is something I've been talking about for years. And I love that about this game. And that gives this game fantastic replay value because honestly, the game is tough. And I could see months from now, you'll still be playing this game. And if you really put it to the high settings, it's going to give you all the challenge you could want. And it's going to keep you on your toes. And you will become a better driver if you put the time in. It rewards you for your investment in time. And I love that. The game is really deep and immersive. And it's not perfect. There are a lot of issues with the game. There are things they need to work on, and some things that I really hope they patch. And other things, I'm sure, are things that are just going to have to, be improved and worked on for the next game. But overall, I'm really pleased with this game. I'm having such a blast with it, and it shines where it matters most. You're gonna have a good time, and it's gonna challenge you, and that's really the most important aspect of the game. So I do feel vindicated. These are the areas I've been screaming about for years that they really need to address, and they're really listening. And I hope you guys are having as much fun with it as I am. And I honestly really feel vindicated because I don't want to sound like, hey, I told you so, but you can honestly see how much of a difference it makes. So the AI is by far the star of the show. It really makes this game really fire on all cylinders when everything's going good. It's not perfect. Um, they'll get into you once in a while when you wish they gave you just a little more room. Okay, so here are some of the negatives. Yes, the AI spreads out more than before, which is another big complaint I've had, but they still need to spread out more. Okay, I do appreciate that they spread out more, but even after a while, when most of the cars are spreading out, there are clumps of cars that stay bunched together. Sometimes you'll even see a freight train of 5 or 6 cars just all locked like they're in a restrictor plate track, and they'll do that at any track. And it makes it difficult to pass, and it's not realistic, and it just kind of, rains a little bit on the parade. So these are areas that need improvement. I really hope they can patch that stuff, and make the cars spread out more and earlier. And that will give you more room to race because the AI really is tough. So those areas need to be addressed. The game, it's tough enough without throwing in stuff like that, which is not realistic. So that needs improvement. And another thing is there are moments where they can get over aggressive. They'll dive bomb once in a while. Or if you're just side by side with them, you never know when they're just going to get into you. And they'll really uh, cause you to really have to catch yourself, and you'll end up losing a bunch of spots because any mistake you make in this game, they'll make you pay for it. You could fight lap after lap after lap, make up a couple spots, and one mistake, and all those spots that you've been fighting for, you'll lose it. So it's frustrating. Sometimes, like I said, you'll want to pull your hair out. But if you really stop and soak it in, I think you will, for the most part, appreciate that stuff because it is realistic. NASCAR is difficult. And this is the first game in a very long time that actually gets you that feeling of what it's like to actually compete. This is not easy. It's not as easy as other games have made it look. And it also gives me a bigger appreciation for the Timmy Hills of the world, or these other guys that they're always in the back. They're always racing. They end up several laps down. Sometimes they can't even finish the race because they just don't have the equipment, and they're fighting just to get a top 30th place or a top 28th, 25th. For a lot of these guys, if you finish below 25th, it's like a win. So this game really makes you feel the reality of the sport, and I love that. And just think of how great it's gonna feel when you finally win. When you finally, and I'm talking about on the top difficulty. Um, I haven't won yet, by the way. I'm full disclosure. When I talk about the career mode, I'll talk about that. I did win by setting the difficulty down, but I did it for a reason. So I'll talk about that in a second. But think of how great it's going to feel when you start winning. And I don't think anyone's going to win on a consistent basis. I think wins will come, but you're really going to have to work for it, and you're really going to have a custom setup. I don't think that, these out of the box default setups are enough to win. Maybe it's just me. I'm not the greatest driver in the world. So, those are things that remain to be seen. But the sense of accomplishment is really there. So I'm going to move on from that. And now we're going to get into the career ownership, which is another pleasant surprise. I'm really enjoying the ownership. It's, it's not the most complicated system, but for the first time out, you don't want to overcomplicate it. But even though it is rather simple, it's still effective. Now I'm going to tell you guys that I chose a specific path for a reason. Um, Once I started playing the career mode and I realized how tough the game is, I said, my ultimate goal is to be an owner in the Cup Series. And if I start ownership too early, it's just going to take a long time. So I said, I want to get through the career mode as quickly as possible. Because I did do a bunch of single player races at 105, top difficulty, with a top line ride, just to really get a sense of what this game is when you're maxed out on equipment, and it's really challenging. So, like I said, I haven't won a race at the top difficulty. Uh, so I don't, and there are times I even doubt it's ever going to happen. Uh, I don't think it can happen without custom setups. So that I'll get into more of that later. But I chose to try to get through the career as quickly as possible so I can get to Cup and become an owner and see what that's like. And I will tell you this. I put the game at 4%, which is the shortest, quickest way to get through it, and I put it on normal. And the game still took it. I mean, I was on it for. It took a long time to get to Cup. I went from dirt. I went to truck. From truck, I went to Xfinity. Now, Xfinity really kicked my ass because I didn't even get a hot seat till the third season in Xfinity. I had to run 3 full seasons in Xfinity. And that's one thing I'd like for them to change. At least give us hot seats every year so that you're not forced to race multiple seasons in the same series. A lot of people do want to kind of move up and away from a lower series. And that's something that needs work. And just add some hot seats, at least give you a chance to move up. I spent more than 2 full days just trying to get out of Xfinity. 4%, just going from one race to the next to the next. And I did bring down the difficulty because I figured if I can get better finishes and a bunch of wins, surely I'm going to get a hot seat offer. And that didn't seem to make a difference. And it was the third full season of Xfinity when I started getting a bunch of hot seat offers for Cup. So that needs to be tweaked. Give people every year hot seat offers so that they're not forced to run multiple series in the multiple seasons in the same lower series. So that's just a suggestion. But I spent over 2 days on that. Just one race after the next, because I wanted to get to Cup and experience the ownership. Because I already know the game is brutally difficult, which is good. So finally get to Cup, and I am currently in my 3rd season in Cup in the ownership. I still have it at very short races because I wanted to feel out the career mode. And I like it. It's simple, and it doesn't take long to get the hang of it. But it is immersive. And another thing I'm going to bring up is I noticed that the Dirt Series ownership isn't that expensive, but it's early on in the game. You really don't have a lot of money. I do think they did. I'm not going to say they nailed it, but they did a great job with the balance of the money so far. When I finally got to Cup, because I hadn't been an owner, I actually showed up there with $16 million in the bank. So I was worried. I said to myself, I hope I'm not a trust fund baby who's going to be able to just get everything right away. Did I mess up by waiting so long? And thankfully, the answer to that is no. it's fucking expensive to be an owner in Cup. And right off the bat, you got to buy a chassis before you can even start anything. And I don't remember if it was $6 or $7 million, but right off the bat, that's what it costs to buy your first chassis. And every chassis you buy, it just goes up and up and up in price. So if you think you're just going to show up and just buy everything right off the bat, the game is not like that. Every series is more and more expensive, which is great. And I knew right away, I said, oh, this is not going to be an issue. And I started hiring employees, training them. You start figuring out what's the smart way to go about that. I don't want to spoil any of that for you guys, but I think the ownership mode is really, really good for the first year. It does add a lot to the game. I'm enjoying it. The one thing I will say is there's what they call paint kit, which is really a paint booth in ownership mode, and you can go and change certain things. It's just like the customization, the regular one, but they actually don't let you change templates, which really bothers me. We don't have a lot of options to customize as it is. So it seems like every sponsorship that is signed to you in ownership, they have a specific template, and you're not allowed to change the template. I don't like that. I don't. You should be able to change templates like you can in single player or whatever the case is. But other than that, I'm really pleased with the ownership. I'm having a blast with it. I now own 3 cars so far, and I'm in my 3rd season. And I have now risen the difficulty to hard, right? Now, this is the other thing I want to talk about now that it came up. The difficulty settings in this game is a problem for me. I don't understand why they have 2 different systems. You got the 105 custom settings where you could just in small increments lower it, or you have in career mode the legend, hard, normal, and easy. Why do you have 2 different systems? And just have the same 105 custom difficulty for everything. Because now, if the AI is too tough, and a lot of people are finding that it's really, really challenging, instead of going from legend to hard, that's a significant gap. Now you can go from 105, maybe 103, 102. Everyone can find a sweet spot that works for them. So I don't understand why there's 2 systems. I don't like the legend to hard to normal to easy settings. There's just too much gap in between. And I think it's just going to leave a lot of people, it's either going to be too hard or too easy. So introduce that custom setting to the career mode, please. It does seem like something that can be done easily. So, 704, if you're listening, please take care of that. That's one thing that can be done that can help for those people who are finding that the AI is too challenging for them. The other thing is that's an issue for me is the default setups. Now, ultimately, what I want to see is that they make the setups in this game or working on setups an intuitive process so that anyone who's playing the game can feel like they're part of the process of working on these setups. That's something NASCAR games have always been missing. And that's an opportunity for these guys to really set another bar for themselves and separate themselves. And I really hope that in maybe the next game we can go in that direction. I will keep making these suggestions. You guys have heard me talk about an automatic crew chief. Just a crew chief that guides you through your career and helps you come up with your own custom setups so that you don't have to be an expert on setups. That's not easy. And I know a lot of people out there are saying, yeah, well, that's easy to learn. Go read up on it. You got to remember something. At the end of the day, this is a video game. It's never a good idea that you expect people to go learn something that technical so that they can enjoy the game. Uh, this is a game at the end of the day. And a game that does it the right way will make it intuitive so that you can feel like you're part of the experience. That's another way to give you that sense of accomplishment, that you can actually work on your own setup and the game guides you through it somehow. And that you really can improve. That's just another level of improvement to the game. In either case, they try to bridge the gap with the 9 different setups. In theory, it's not a bad idea. The problem is the setups themselves just aren't good enough. You have 9 setups to choose from. In all honesty, maybe 4, maybe 5 of those setups are usable. Um, they're not that different from one another. If you really look at it, it reminds me of the slider system from years ago, from tight to loose. And if you look at all 9 default setups, they're like all together in boxes. It is like a slider. As you go up from one box to the next, it gets looser and looser. So you can find a setup that feels comfortable, right? But comfortable and fast are 2 different things. And just because a setup is comfortable doesn't mean it has speed in it. And I think that's where the weakness of this system comes from. And the set and it'll work for you on a lower setting, but on the top difficulty, I have a hard time believing anyone can actually win with a default setup. I think that the only way you can be even competitive against this AI at the top difficulty is with custom setups. And that, I think, is the disconnect. And I think that is going to leave a lot of people kind of, out in the cold. And the quickest fix they can do is to go back, work on these custom setups, and give us better setups so that you can have better performance and actually have a fighting chance. Because I really think, at least so far, it's been brutal. Uh, just fighting the AI with with these default setups, they're just not good enough setups. There's also glitches within the setup menu itself. If you want to try to come up with your own custom setups, there are glitches in the game. People are dropping the bump stop all the way to 3 across, and still you're able to maximize the camber on the front wheels. It's just not realistic, and it's a glitch. They got to fix that stuff. And like I said, if you're not an expert on setting up cars, you're stuck with trying to get setups from other people. Now, I'm not going to lie, I've done it in the past and I might end up doing it again, but I really feel like I'm cheating. I'm not saying it's cheating, but you feel like it. And I'd much rather have a way that the game is more intuitive and includes you in that process and guides you through setting up your own race car. And that would just really give you that much more of a sense of accomplishment. Think of how cool that would be. Also, give us a testing page. The only way to test now is in practice, and there are other cars on the track, and they just get in the way. So these are areas they really need to improve. But right now, the quickest thing they can do is just give us better default setups. That really needs to happen. That is, I'm not happy with these setups. I think there's a long way to go with that. I am going to talk more about why there are certain things lacking in this game, and most of the comparisons here, as I predicted, would be that this thing would pretty much match up with the best game we've had all ever, which is 2004 Thunder, in my opinion. Right? Some people may feel differently, but I'm going to talk. Let me get to a couple of other points. So that's career ownership. I'm very high on it. It's very deep and immersive. I'm loving it. But like I said, these are issues. Now we go to online multiplayer. Online, in my opinion, is pretty much like last year. Uh, if you were expecting a huge difference, it's not there. I don't really blame 704. It's really going to take some real innovation to change online. The big weakness with online is the people. And the only time you're ever going to have some good, clean racing is with people you know and trust. Other than that, online racing is the same mess it's always been and always will be. There's really no way to police what's happening. A lot of people say, let's put damage online, that'll fix everything. No, it won't. No, it won't. People will not stop smashing into you either on purpose or just over driving corners. Just race out a fucking road course or track like Martinsville or Bristol. That's all people do. They'll race full speed into the corner and just use you as a wall, and it's just a horrible experience. I have no use for online. I fucking hate it. And thankfully, the offline content and racing experience in this game is fantastic, and I couldn't care less about online. However, there is something that really impressed me about the online. It's the newest feature, which is spectator mode. It really is cool. I love it. You can change camera angles, and when you watch it, it literally looks like you're watching a race on TV. I think that's awesome. The one thing missing is commentators. Imagine having actual commentators and real sound as if you're watching a race on TV. I can only imagine what some people can do editing the spectator mode. I really look forward to seeing what some of you guys out there who are very talented, very good at editing would do with it. And take it and add fucking, real audio commentary, maybe from like Darrell Waltrip or Junior or Burton, these guys. It'd be cool. And I like it. The spectator mode is a big hit for me, and it also helps just watching the knuckleheads online. But other than that, if you are purely an online racer, I'm not sure there's enough here for you in this game. So just keeping that real. But like I said, online racing, I see there are flaws just in the very nature of it. And there's not much 704 can do about it. There's small things they can do to improve. But you can't control people. And your experience is completely at the mercy of other people. And many times you find yourself spending hours online and it just feels like a huge waste of time. It's just a mess. So that's how I feel about the online multiplayer. It is what it is. Now I'm going to talk about the negatives, right? Because as I predicted, this game was going to have issues, and I'm not surprised that it does. I talked about the default setups, and I talked about the difficulty settings, right? We need to have that custom 105 setting for career mode as well. Give people a chance to just tone it down just a little bit. And the default setups need to be better, at least until they come up with an intuitive way to help you, guide you to come up with, your own setups, which I think is ultimately where they need to go, as it will also add more immersion to the game. Here we go to the wheel controls. Now, I can't speak about the hand controls. Only those of you who use hand controls can attest to it. But I can tell you that the wheel controls need a lot of work. You can tell that this game is not optimized for wheel controls. Out of the box, it's horrible. The force feedback is horrendous and almost non-existent. There's also a huge dead spot in the wheel where it's just floating with no firm feel at it at all. You can't feel the track. You can't feel anything. It's just like it's disconnected. Like the steering column is disconnected. But it's not a lot. It's like maybe a quarter of an inch left and right before it actually you feel something. But it's really horrible to drive that way. The one thing I found that if you set the sensitivity all the way up, it really helps with that. It does improve it a lot. But overall, the wheel settings need a lot of work. You can tell they haven't spent a lot of time optimizing it. And at the end of the day, this is a racing game. You have to get that right. People do play with a wheel, and you really got to work on it. There's no paint booth. All right, I already talked about that. They really need to either give us a paint booth, or you really got to give us a lot more options with what's there. I don't think it's a terrible system, but I think that giving us a lot more options, you can do a lot with this system. But I do prefer a fully fleshed out paint booth. And damage model. Now, the damage model, when it works, and I emphasize when it works, it looks good. I don't know if there's a NASCAR game where the damage model looks better. That's just my opinion. When it works, it looks cool. The problem is, one, it's just looks. The damage has no effect on performance of any of the cars. You can't DNF. You can't. You don't really see blown engines, stuff like that. And like I said, when it works, more often than not, the damage model does not work. You'll see huge wrecks and you'll have no damage, or the AI won't have damage. It's very hit and miss. So when it works, you can see potential. There's something there. The problem is, why isn't it working? I don't know the answer to that. This is real technical stuff. They really got to get in there. Again, this is something they need to spend time on. So the damage model is just, it's not working. So they need to work on that. Overall, I'm going to tell you my overall rating for this game is an 8.5 out of 10, which is it's borderline great. Okay. There are issues, and it's really what keeps it from being a 9 out of 10 or higher. There are a lot of issues in the game. There's a lot of room for improvement. But even, those issues are not game breaking. One thing I forgot to mention, how could I forget? The pit strategy of the AI has been greatly improved. It is not a game breaking issue anymore. Again, it has room for improvement. There are times where certain cars will stay out and you're like, why did they stay out? But for the most part, when there's an opportunity to pit, whether it's under caution, the end of a stage, they usually do pit. That's really a huge improvement. And now these are all things that really add to the racing. So the game is an 8.5 out of 10. I really love this game. I am having a blast. In spite of whatever issues are there, this game shines where it matters most, on the track. The actual gameplay, the racing, it is fantastic. This is the best AI ever, in my opinion. Some people may bring up NASCAR 2003, the PC game, which is a simulator. That is not part of the conversation. For me, it's a different animal. I'm talking about NASCAR console games. This is 8.5 out of 10. It is the second best NASCAR game ever made. Pretty much what I predicted it would be. It doesn't take the top spot. It just comes this short. And I'm going to tell you now why 2004 has held on to that crown for one more year. Overall, there are things about this game that are better than that game. But there are things about that game which are still superior. One is the presentation. That game, it's 15 years old, and you had audio commentary, pre-race, post-race. You had the Star Spangled Banner. You had the warm-up lap where they went through the entire field of cars. In this game you got text, and they only talk about 2 or 3 cars. They never talk about you unless you win the pole. But Thunder is just night and day better presentation wise. It makes you feel more included. It's just overall better, and it's a 15-year-old game. And the second thing is the stats. That game blows this game away when it comes to stats. Now, I will say this. I've been screaming about stats for a long time. This game does have stats. I don't want people to walk away thinking that these guys are still releasing games with no stats. The stats are there, but it's very bare bones and they're an afterthought. And they don't feel connected to the career mode in any way. There's a lot you can do with presentation to tie in the stats. Maybe, like I said, in pre-race and post-race, talk about things concerning you as a driver and how you're doing in the sport and tie the stats into that. There's a lot they can do in those two areas, and in those two areas, 2004 blows this game away. And in everything else, it's really a dogfight. And that game did not have multiplayer. This game does. That's a pretty big deal, but I'm not sure it's fair to compare a 15-year-old game where online multiplayer was not a thing. So I kind of leave that out the conversation. I don't think it's fair. Some other people may disagree. But top to bottom, 2004 is just it's more polished. In other words, that game had its own issues, but top to bottom, it was just a more polished game. This game just doesn't feel as polished overall. But 704 has nothing to hang their heads in shame about. They should be very proud. This game shines where it matters most. And I highly recommend this game. If you are a NASCAR fan, if you've been waiting for a game that's really deep and immersive and really gives you a challenge, this game is fantastic in those areas. And that's really what matters. At the end of the day, this game is fun. And the replay value is through the roof because I don't see this game becoming too easy. I don't see that. And for those reasons, the replay value is really high. And it's definitely worth the money. That's just my opinion. But overall, 2004 is just top to bottom, slightly more polished. Now I'm going to explain why. There's one reason why a 15-year-old game like that is still more polished. And I'm going to tell you, it's not because EA Sports is a bigger company, has more resources. Yeah, that is a bigger company with more resources, but that's not why it's more polished. It's more polished because 15 years ago, there was no such thing as patches. You couldn't just release a game and fix it later, like most developers do now. It's just the way business is done now. Back then, what you released is what you got. And if you released a game with certain bugs and glitches, you were stuck with it. So developers really couldn't afford to be careless. They had to invest time and resources into testing and quality control. It's not like that anymore. Now, developers do still test and they still have a certain level of quality control. It's just not what it used to be. It's nowhere near what it was because they have that luxury of patching the game later. And for that reason, 2004 is a more polished product, top to bottom. It's just more polished. And it's because of that, because of the stringent testing and the quality control. They just couldn't afford to release it where everything wasn't balanced and working properly. That's the difference. And if these guys spent more time testing this game, it would be even better. But as it sits, 8.5 out of 10 is a really great score. This game is a lot of fun. And I think the people who take the racing seriously will appreciate this game even more. If you're just one of these guys who races quick sprints and you ram your way through the field, if you leave it on the highest difficulty, you're in for a rude awakening. But this game rewards you for patience and consistency. And I love it. And it's the most realistic in terms of representing NASCAR. This is really closer to what real NASCAR racing is. Most people struggle. Most people are just fighting, to get a halfway decent finish. You know, that's the reality of the sport. It's really tough. It's brutal, and this game is brutal in all the right ways. So that's my review. It's just my opinion. I know people are going to disagree with things here and there, but I promise you, if you invest time in the game, it will reward you. And I'm telling you now, if I took my time with this game and I actually raced the way I always race, and let's say I did just 25% races at Legend, I'd still be in the Truck Series right now. And I put a lot of time in the game. Like I said, I took time off, and that's where it is. And it's definitely what I consider a great entry into the series of NASCAR games. It's the second best game ever, in my opinion. So I look forward to your comments. I'm interested to see what you guys think. I'm sorry, it's an hour and 6 minutes. I really just I knew it was going to be long, but I can't help it. So I apologize to you guys for these lengthy videos, but I hope you got something out of it. I did the best I could. I did not hit every single technical aspect of the game. I'm not a professional game reviewer. I'm just a guy who loves NASCAR games. Um, and it's just really a layman's view of the game. Other guys may give you a better, more technical review. And, don't just take my word for everything. Check out other reviews if you feel you need to. But I really believe I can put my own stamp as far as if you guys do respect my opinions, then I stand behind this game. Go out, buy it. It is a huge improvement. And the seat of the pants feel of this game, it's really a combination of things. It's not that the physics are just fucking mind-blowing. Everything in this game has issues and room for improvement, but everything's been improved. And when you add up all the improvements, it's just really going to knock you on your ass if you really don't focus and race smartly. Take your time with the game. Race longer races, man. I promise you, it's rewarding. You will get more out of it. If you don't, you're just cheating yourself. So those are my thoughts. I look forward to your comments. I'm having a blast with this game. This is going to be probably the most fun I've had, most fun winters I've had, because this is a game I'm going to be playing nonstop. This and Red Dead Redemption 2, and that's it. I don't have time or room for other games. I don't need it. I know that these two games are going to satisfy me for a long time to come. I hope 704 keeps listening to our suggestions. I'm going to keep fighting for the things this game needs, and I hope they listen. And I hope you guys keep forwarding my ideas to these guys. They're not going to sit and watch a review like this, but who knows? Maybe they get something out of it. Maybe somebody sees something there that helps. They deserve credit for listening. A lot of developers don't do that. They're just like my way or the highway. And these guys realized, we got to give people what they're asking for, and it's going to pay off. I hope people really support these games, and these guys, they really are the right guys for the job. So that's it. 1 hour 9 minutes. That's it. So what do you think? I look forward to your comments.